Good morning, Bhante, and all the monks, respected all the monks and everyone joining the Zoom platform from all around the places, not just Cambodia, but in different countries as well, especially from USA. Very good morning and good evening to all people in Asian continents. Today we have a great pleasure to have invited Venerable Bhante Sanathavihari from Los Angeles, and right now he resides in Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey, America. And I have known Venerable through the Facebook platforms. Sometimes we met on the bi-weekly Dhamma discussion with Venerable Sarana from Canada, and I know he's quite a good Dhamma talker. He usually gives very interesting talk on social media as well, and just like to read his short background again for all of you. Venerable Los Angeles Sanathavihari Bhikkhu is a Mexican-American Theravada monk of the Sarathchandra Buddhist Center in North Hollywood. And Bhante was ordained in 2015 as a novice at the Sarathchandra Buddhist Center, North Hollywood, by Bhante Kolitha Royal Pandita Nayaka Thera. In 2018, he received higher ordination from him at the Maharagama Bhikkhu Training Center in the city of Colombo, Sri Lanka. He is a student of the late Dr. Bhante Punnaji Maha Thera and director of the Casa De Bhavana, an outreach project to bring the Dhamma to the Spanish-speaking world. He is also a co-author of Buddhism in 10 Steps. Bhante is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force and has a BA in religion and an MS in counseling psychology at MSMU University. He also holds 2 mindfulness-based program facilitator certification. So this is just a short bio from Venerable. So I like to just introduce a bit to Bhante also, that this platform is a registered classroom actually, but we also open to the public, allowing them to join Zoom. Especially we have some different lecturers or different guest speakers from different parts of the world to join and share the knowledge and experience with our students, mostly from Cambodia. We also have some students joining from Singapore, from Thailand, Myanmar, and also USA. So today is the week 12 that we have been running this Buddhism in English level 4. Our main purpose is to provide the students to be able to learn the Dhamma universally. I mean, around the world, getting to learn from different lecturers, hearing from different people, sharing, the Dhamma based on their knowledge and also from their own perspectives as well. So today we got a very great chance to hear from Bhante Sanathavihari. So we have around like 1 hour and 20 minutes. So Bhante can give like 15 minutes or an hour of a presentation, and the rest we will have a Q&A session at the end. So everyone, please take note if you ever have any question along the way that Venerable giving presentation. So just take note, and at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A session. So Bhante, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Vandana Bhante, thank you so much for this lovely opportunity. I'll also pay my respects to all the venerable members of the Mahasangha that I see here today. Also all the Upasikas and Upasakas that are here. in this place. And also I'd like to thank Jenny again for connecting us and her family for making this possible. Yes, so Bhante asked me to talk about the Ti-Lakkhaṇa, the three characteristics of reality, of the world, of the universe, of life, however we want to say it. And I'm going to be specifically focusing on anicca, right? Not permanent or impermanent nature of all things. But you're going to notice that we can't speak about one without the others. So although my focus is on impermanence, anicca, you're also going to see dukkha, suffering, and anatta, non-self, because they go together. You cannot separate them, right? So just for you to know that. But my focus will be mostly on anicca. And it's going to be mostly from, I'm going to be using suttas, to kind of look at anicca within its context, right? We might have our own ideas about anicca, what impermanence means, but it's very important to place it within the wider context of the teachings of the Buddha and in the Buddha's own words too. So we can see how the Buddha uses it and what he's referring to in particular. Because when we think about anicca, we think about, oh, like the sun rises, the moon goes up and down, right? The flowers come up, the flowers fade, and that is anicca. But the Buddha is really focusing on a particular aspect of anicca, right? He's pointing to one thing, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on. So Bhante, if you can give me permission to share screen, please.
Yeah, I already made you the co-host, I think.
Okay.
Can you try?
All right. Okay, I hope everyone can see well. Is everything fine? Yes.
Yeah, Bhante, I can see it.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Okay, I'm gonna try to find a nice balance between speaking in plain English, and kind of being a bit technical, so it's always like a dance, right? If we're too general, we don't get enough understanding. But if we're too technical, then especially people who didn't grow up speaking English are going to get lost. So I want to find a nice balance between both. Okay, I'm going to try. That's my aspiration. So I want to start just with this beautiful verse that we've all heard all the time, so many times, right? Anicca vatta sankhara uppadevaya dhammino uppajjitva nirujjanti tessam vupa samosuko. What does this mean? All things are impermanent. They arise, pass away. Having arisen, they come to an end. Their coming to peace is bliss. It's very important. I think many of us have heard this at funeral services, right? This is the chanting that we do when someone passes away, or if we're having a memorial service or an anniversary when someone's passed away, right? But we can think sometimes, right? How is the coming of end, these things coming to an end, peaceful, right? Isn't dying dukkha, right? Isn't things ceasing painful? Well, we're talking about a particular thing here. And that's why it's very important to understand that when the Buddha is talking about anicca and this process of change, right, of rebirth, of samsara coming to an end, we're really speaking about something in particular. It's not just a general statement. But first, let's explore this word anicca. What does it mean, right? What is anicca? So the Pali comes from the Sanskrit anitya, and nitya or nicca means literally stable, right? Something that is stable. So if you add it negates that, right? The negative. So something that is not stable, something that changes, right? Something that is impermanent. That's what we mean by the word anicca. And also anicca is an unescapable law, owing to the fact that all that which does appear in the world or to consciousness must forcibly have an origination, right? It hasn't been there forever. It has risen due to the presence of the necessary conditions, a certain duration, and enter on a stage of decay, right? So nothing lasts forever. Things begin to fall apart. Here we deal with the second among the three characteristics, Ti-Lakkhaṇa, which is dukkha, because things fade away. They bring unsatisfactory. All things are unsatisfactory due to their nature of being impermanent. Impermanent is the first of the three characteristics of existence, Ti-Lakkhaṇa. It is from the fact of impermanence that in most texts, the other two characteristics, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anatta, are derived. And as I said in the beginning, we can't separate these things. Because of anicca, there's dukkha. And because things are of the nature of anicca and dukkha, they are empty of a self, or something that is worthy of calling a self, anatta. Impermanence is intimately associated with the doctrine of anatta, according to which things have no fixed nature, essence, or self, which is what I just explained. So really, anicca is to help us gain insight into the nature of non-self, anatta, right? To help us gain insight into the nature of the world, reality, experience, consciousness, phenomena, whatever we want to call it, right? It is that which is going to let us see correctly. Anicca is the proper way to see things, instead of stable, enduring, everlasting. And it's just a universal law, right? It's not something to believe in. It is something to see for yourself, to experiment for yourself. So now I'm going to share the context in which the Buddha provides this teaching. And I think it's best to start with the first teachings of the Buddha, right? So I think many of us know that there are three discourses which are said to be the first three teachings of the Buddha. The first one is the Dhammika Sutta, right? The setting in motion, the wheel of Dhamma, where the Buddha, the Sammasambuddha shares the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, right? Chattari Ariya Sachani, and one monk understands only, right? Only one monk understands Anya Kondanya. So let's not feel too bad if we don't understand this teaching after today. You know, even these great yogis who had the Buddha as his teacher, four of them didn't understand, you know, so we can practice a little self-compassion. If you find that today's presentation is a little too complicated, don't worry about it. The second teaching that he gave was the Ti-Lakkhaṇa Sutta, which is the teaching on non-self. And it is here in this teaching of non-self that the Buddha begins to explain anicca, dukkha, and anatta, obviously, because this is the Ti-Lakkhaṇa Sutta, right? But there is intimations of non-self, of anicca and dukkha in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta when the Buddha says Panchu Padana Kanda, right? In brief, the five aggregates subject to clinging or subject to attachment, right? And that leads us to this sutta, where we're going to start exploring the Ti-Lakkhaṇa and focusing on anicca. So I encourage you, please, when you have a chance, look for this sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 22.56, if you're using the new classification version, which you can find Bhikkhu Bodhi and Sutta Central. This is the way they organize the suttas, and it's called Ti-Lakkhaṇa Sutta. So please, I really encourage people to not just listen to what the monks say, but do your research, you know, fact check. Whatever a monk tells you, like me, you go look for yourself, because that's what the Buddha wants us to do. You should find out for yourself. Be independent in the teaching from others, is what the Buddha said, right? We have to be our own authority. So this is kind of like, my hope is that you will go look for yourself and find out for yourself and read it for yourself. So in this is just an excerpt, right? A citation, a quote from this sutta, and we'll go straight into it. And then the other suttas, I'll kind of be more brief, because we're going to see the same pattern kind of being repeated. And that's kind of what I want to emphasize in this pattern. What is the Buddha talking about when he talks about anicca? What is he referring to? What does he want to apply impermanence to, right? What should we see through this lens of impermanence, of that is not stable? And here's just a little part, and we'll go straight into the sutta after this. What do you think, bhikkhus? Is rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, and vijnana permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. But if it is impermanent, is it suffering or happiness? Dukkha, Bhante. But if it's impermanent, suffering, imperishable, is it fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, I am this is myself. No, Bhante. What does that mean? What's the natural conclusion from these brief statements? Anatta, right? These things are anatta, non-self. Why? Because we have the three characteristics right here, right? One, they're changing, impermanent. Two, they produce dukkha. And three, this is not mine, I am not this, and this is not myself. Right? So when we're talking about anicca, we're applying anicca to the panchakanda, the five aggregates, the five dimensions of what we call a self or a subject, a being, right? We have rupa, which is translated in many ways, sometimes as materiality, sometimes as form, sometimes as image, right? We have Vedana. Vedana means the feeling tone of an experience, right? Either sukha, dukkha, or dukkha masukha, which sukha means pleasant, dukkha means unpleasant, and a dukkha masukha means neither pleasant or unpleasant, usually translated as neutral, right? So it's not an emotion, it's just that kind of general feeling tone that is experienced when the mind comes in contact with any of the salayatana, any of the six senses. Then we have sanya. Sanya is translated as usually as perception or as sensation. It is the ability for a sense organ to recognize just the bare minimum sensation, right? So it says when the Buddha talks about visual sanya, right? Chakku, he says one notices or recognizes blue, yellow, red, and he talks about the colors. So sanya has to do with the perception of just basic colors, right? We're not talking about a person yet or elaborate combinations that form what we call images. We're just talking about basic sensorial sensations, right? Or images or perceptions of sensorial stimulation. Sorry if these words are too big, just trying to be a little technical. And sankhara really has to do with the chitta, right? With chetana, with volition, with emotions here. It's that part that constructs and adds this whole kind of like depth, this dimension of depth to the experience, right? And function to the experience. Then we have vijnana, which is usually translated as consciousness, but it's just something that knows. It's a way of knowing, right? So when the Buddha talks about vijnana, he explains it's that which knows that what is sour, what is salty, what is sweet, right? So it's that ability to recognize and experience that which is known, right? That is what vijnana stands for. And all these five things that include everything that we experience, right? So here what the Buddha is doing is with these five categories, he's saying we can fit everything that is experienced within these five categories, everything that is lived. We can fit the whole world into these five categories, right? And all of these five categories change, right? Seeing is always changing. Smelling is always changing. Tasting, touching, hearing, thinking, feeling. These things are always changing, right? So they're impermanent. They're anicca, right? And because they change, they do not remain the way we want them to remain. And that is unsatisfactory, right? That brings us suffering. It brings us pain, dukkha, because they don't remain the way we want them to remain. And if things are always changing, we have no control of them really, or very little control, and they change in such a way that leads to an outcome that we don't want, then can we really say that these things are mine? That we are these things? That these things are myself? Well, you lack any agency. If they were yours, you would be able to fix them in which you could make them the way you want to. And the Buddha gives a great example in the suttas about a king, right? He says, can a king order someone to be executed? Could a king, make a certain thing in his land? Could a king do, etc.? And the person that he's talking to says, yes, of course, he's the king. He can do whatever he wants in his land. And that's why he's the king. He has agency over that place. But can we do the same thing with rupa? Can we do the same thing with vedana? Can we do the same thing with sanya, sankhara, and vijnana like the king does with his kingdom? No, we can't, right? So this is not our kingdom. This is not our world. This is not our place, right? Because we don't have agency. There's where the anatta comes from, right? Because things are changing, we don't have control. And things are changing in a way that we don't like. We don't want them to be. So I just want to kind of briefly go into more depths into the sutta. Can everyone see the sutta? And sometimes the links don't work properly.
No, Bhante.
Okay, so then I'll do this and then we'll switch over to, there we go. I think it should be working now.
Yeah. Okay.
So now we're here at the Ti-Lakkhaṇa Sutta. And this one I'll read completely, and the other ones are very short, I promise, and we'll just do reviews. So we're not going to be getting into all the details and having to read every sutta. Thus I have heard on one occasion the Blessed One was dwelling at Varanasi in the deer park of Isipatana. The Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus of the group of 5 thus: Bhikkhus, Bhante, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, Rupa is non-self. For if bhikkhus, Rupa were self, this Rupa would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have of it Rupa. Let my Rupa be thus, let my Rupa not be thus. But because Rupa is non-self, Rupa leads to affliction, which means suffering, right? It is not possible to have it of Rupa. Let my Rupa be thus, let my Rupa not be thus, right? So we can't control it, as I was saying earlier. Vedana is non-self. Sanya is non-self. Sankhara is non-self. Consciousness is not self. For if bhikkhus vijnana were self, vijnana would not lead to affliction. It would be possible to have it of vijnana. Let my vijnana be thus. Let my vijnana not be thus. But because vijnana is non-self, vijnana leads to affliction, and it is not possible to have a vijnana. Let my vijnana be thus. Let my vijnana not be thus. What do you think, bhikkhus? Is Rupa permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. And if it were, is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Dukkha, Bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fit regarded to be thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, Bhante. Is Vedana permanent or impermanent? Is Sanya permanent or impermanent? Is Sankhara permanent or impermanent? Is vijnana permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. And what is impermanent? And what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Dukkha, Bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fitted to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, Bhante. Therefore, bhikkhus, any kind of rupa whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all rupa should be seen as it really is, with correct wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of Vedana whatsoever, any kind of Sanya whatsoever, any kind of Sankhara whatsoever, any kind of Vijnana whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all Vijnana should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Seeing thus, bhikkhus, the instructed noble disciple experiences revulsion towards Rupa, revulsion towards Vedana, revulsion towards Sanya, revulsion towards Sankhara, revulsion towards Vijnana. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through this passion, his mind becomes liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge. It is liberated. He understands, destroyed his birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. This is what the Blessed One said, elated those bhikkhus delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the bhikkhu of the group of 5 were liberated from the taints of non-clinging. So here we see how anicca is the entry point to seeing, to letting go, right? To letting go of the 5 khandhas. So usually we have the Pancha Upadana Khandha. We're attached, we're clinging to the 5 aggregates. How do we free ourselves? How do we free ourselves from Upadana, from clinging, from attachment? Through seeing anicca, right? Which we're going to talk to at the end. We're going to go into the Anicca Sanya Sutta, which is very important. And through seeing the impermanence, right? The anicca of these 5 aggregates of the Panchakanda, we begin to experience this repulsion, right? Moving away from identifying with these 5 khandhas And we begin to let them go, right? We begin to let them go. That means we begin to let go of the upadana, and we become free from upadana. And to be free from clinging to the 5 aggregates, panchupadana kanda, means to be freely, completely awakened, to become an arahant, actually, if you completely release, right, all these things. And that's what it means in the beginning when we, let me reshare that. The first slide I showed you, which is usually what is recited during the funeral services. We'll go back one. Okay, here we go. Right? Anichavata sankhara upavaya dhammino upajitva nirujjanti tesam vupasamosuko, right? They're coming to an end. Having arisen, they come to an end. They're coming to peace is bliss, right? So letting go of the upadana to the panchakanda, right? That itself is awakening. That itself is peaceful, because the upadana causes birth, old age, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, right? Sokapadideva, dukkha, domanasa, upayasa, all of that comes from clinging to the 5 aggregates, because we see them as me, myself, as permanent, right? That is me. This is mine. I am part of that. But through being able to see the world and see the self and reality of through the lens of impermanence, anicca sanya, we let go. And when we let go, we find that peace, the bliss of letting go, right? The coming to an end, especially mahaparinibbana, when the 5 aggregates come to an end, because there's no more rebirth, there's no more upadana, no more tangha to keep continuing. That is the highest bliss. And I really want to focus on this because we're all going to go to many funerals the rest of our life, right? This is something that it's going to happen all the time. And we hear this all the time. But do we really understand this verse, right? Anichavata sankhara. We really need to understand it. And this is a teaching that you can take with you everywhere, right? It's very short. It's not a long sutta. So I really want you to connect this idea of anicca, of the Ti-Lakkhaṇa, of this verse, and have it with you. If you take anything from this lesson today, it's just this, you know, and every time that you hear it, next time you go to the temple, to the Wat, you'll be like, oh, I know what this means, right? I understand anicca. And you can use this as like an anicca anusati, right? To reflect on anicca as a meditation, as a bhavana. It doesn't have to, you know, the practice of anicca doesn't only necessarily have to be at the high level of anicca sanya, like in the practice of vipassana, but we can also contemplate, we can reflect, we can bring the mind again to this teaching of the Buddha. And this is a very natural way, right? You're going to hear this all the time at the temple. So I think it becomes easier for us to connect with our tradition, our culture, our religion, and want to go and want to participate when we understand what we're chanting and why we're there. So that's why I'm really making this emphasis, connecting anicca and the understanding of the previous sutta, Ti-Lakkhaṇa, with this verse that I shared earlier. So now I'd like to move on to the actual anicca sutta. So there's actually a sutta, a discourse from the Buddha on anicca, right? So it's important that we see what did the Buddha actually say about anicca in particular, when he's only focusing on this one aspect. Although, as I said earlier, you can't separate it from the other 3, so you're going to kind of see the same pattern here again. And this is from the Samyutta Nikaya 22.45. And it says, at Savatthi, bhikkhus, rupa is impermanent, Vedana is impermanent, Sanya is impermanent, Sankhara is impermanent, Vijnana is impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is suffering is non-self. What is non-self should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom. Thus, this is not mine, this I am not. This is not myself. When one sees this thus as it really is with correct wisdom, the mind becomes dispassionate and liberated from the taints of non-clinging. So I'll just share the sutta real quick again, and I'll have to do another screen share. Here we go. Okay. So I just read the first part and we'll continue on. It's a very short sutta, you see. When one sees this as it really is with correct wisdom, one holds no more views concerning the past. When one holds no more views concerning the past, one holds no more views concerning the future. When one holds no more views concerning the future, one has no more obstinate grasping. When one has no more obstinate grasping, the mind becomes dispassionate towards rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana, and is liberated from the taints, from the asavas, by non-clinging. By being liberated, it is steady. By being steady, is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana. One understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more this state of being. This was actually the second one, but it's pretty much the same. We'll just do them both now. So I'll go back to the first one. There's Anicca Sutta 1 and Dutiya Anicca Sutta, which is the second one. But I just read the second one. We'll go to the first one, and you'll see it's basically the same thing. At Savatthi bhikkhus, form is impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is suffering is non-self. What is non-self should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees this thus as it really is with correct wisdom, the mind becomes dispassionate and liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. Vedana is impermanent, sanya is impermanent, sankara is impermanent, and vijnana is impermanent. What is impermanent is dukkha. What is dukkha is anatta. And what is anatta should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees this thus as it really is with correct wisdom, the mind becomes dispassionate and liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. If a bhikkhu's mind becomes dispassionate towards the rupa element, it is liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. If the mind has become dispassionate towards a vedana element, towards the sanya element, towards the sankara element, towards the vijnana element, it is liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. By being liberated, it is steady. By being steady, it is content. By being content, he is not agitated. By being unagitated, he personally attains nibbana. He understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived, what has to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. So, I've shared with you so far 3 suttas, and we see the same concept. We see the same idea, the same application of anicca. Anicca is always applicated to the penetrating and understanding and letting go of the panchakhandhas, right? That's really what it's in. And it helps us get rid of upadana, which is clinging, which clinging is conditioned by tanha, which is craving, right? So anicca also helps us overcome tanha, bhavatanha, kamatanha, bhavatanha, and vibhavatanha. And as the Buddha said in the Four Noble Truths, right? The cause for our suffering, the origination of our suffering is from tanha, right? There's dukkha, there's samudaya, there's nirodha, and there's magga. The cause of our suffering is this tanha. And this tanha arises because we want things to be a certain way. We think things are a certain way. We see the world as stable, the self as stable, so we desire to keep it that way. But through the lens or through the perception of anicca sanya, we're able to break down this false view, letting go of this view. And when we let go of this view, we let go of the past. We let go of the future, as in this sutta says, right? And then we're able to let go of this idea of the self. So it's very important that we understand that actually anicca, this understanding of anicca, is basically samaditi. Samaditi. Usually when we talk about samaditi, we talk about the Four Noble Truths. But also the understanding of the Ti-Lakkhaṇa, which includes anicca, dukkha, and anatta, is also samaditi. There's a great sutta, I don't have time to go into today, in the Nikaya by Venerable Sariputta. Samaditi Sutta, Venerable Arahant Sariputta explains the many different ways that we can have samaditi. So there's not only just one way of samaditi, although they're basically talking about the same thing, but from different perspectives, it's not really something different. It's all the same thing. Another way that we can understand these Four Noble Truths is through understanding the Ti-Lakkhaṇa and understanding anicca. And it's really anicca is really the first step. Although most of the time we talk about dukkha, we always see anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So it's really understanding also that our suffering is not permanent, right? For many people in the world right now, with the rates of depression going so high, they feel that their suffering is permanent, right? So they try to find a permanent solution to their suffering, some of them, which means killing themselves, right? But if you see, no, suffering is impermanent itself, right? It is subject to change. Then there's that hope, there's that relief that one doesn't have to be this way all the time, right? And that at some future point, this person will not be there. And you don't have to try to find a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? You can try to manage more, applying more maybe temporary symptomatic applications or solutions to this temporary problem, and see how slowly and methodically it will begin to dissipate, right? So this understanding of anicca has very practical implications. It's not only for the ultimate freedom from suffering, which is nibbana, but also like in this example of people who feel hopelessness, and that they're stuck in this way of being, that there's no escape. This lens of anicca can help them see that they're suffering, that the suffering is also an anicca, right? That they're clinging to this suffering, the upadana, then personalizing this state of me being a bad person, or me being the victim, or me being hopeless, is also subject to change. And that gives them at least a glimmer of light for those who have eyes to see in the darkness, right? That beautiful simile that the Buddha gives. And now I'm going to share one more sutta and another little part. So we did this one. Okay. Now we're going to come to the last sutta I'm going to share today, which is called the Anicca Sanya Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 2202. You're going to notice that all of these suttas are from the Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya is such a rich text because everything is put into these books and chapters on specific topics, right? So if you're ever interested in a particular topic, I know it's very difficult, like in the Digha Nikaya and Majjhima Nikaya, because things are not organized by topics, they're organized by the length. But if you go into the Samyutta Nikaya, you can directly find a topic that you're interested in, that you have questions about, and go through that whole vaga, right? Like go through that whole book, that whole chapter, and learn about that topic. So here's another thing I hope that is everyone, becomes a little bit more familiar with the suttas and goes in there. And anytime you have any questions or you're interested, go into the suttas, look up the topic, and see for yourself. And then if you have any questions, you can always ask one of the ajahns, right? And they can help you understand what's there. But really, please, I'm trying, my hope is that, people making the suttas and the teachings of the Buddha more accessible to everyone and sparking curiosity. Don't wait for someone else to explain it to you, right? Don't be pamada, right? Don't be late, don't be lazy. You got to be apamada, diligent, right? Going for it all the time. That's the key to awakening. So I'm trying to bring up some apamada in everyone, because I don't want people to be pamada. So here's what it says on the Anicca Sanya Sutta. At Savatthi bhikkhus, when the perception of impermanence is developed, which is Anicca Sanya, and cultivated, it eliminates all sensual lust. It eliminates all lust for existence. It eliminates all ignorance, right? So all kamma, it eliminates all wanting for bhava, for existence, and it eliminates all avijja, ignorance, and the conceit of I am. So I do want to share this sutta with you. It's very nice. At Savatthi bhikkhus, when the perception of impermanence is developed, which is anicca sanya, and cultivated, it eliminates all sensual lust. It eliminates all lust for existence. It eliminates all ignorance. It uproots all conceit I am. It eliminates all sensual lust, right? We lust for things because we think those things are going to bring us happiness and they're going to bring some level of stability, but they don't, right? Once you realize that, no, they don't. These things are not intrinsically happy, and they lead to dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness, because I can't hold on to them, that they're always changing and they don't bring stability. You're able to overcome that sensual lust. Our sensual lust only arises because we think that those things or those experiences are going to bring us some sort of stability and happiness. Once we see through that, we're free of it. It eliminates all lust for existence, right? We also find some stability and some security in this life. But once we're able to see the true nature of this life, how we're born, we age, get sick, get old, and die, and are reborn and continue on, right? We lose the things that we love, we don't get what we want, and we get the things that we don't want. Then we're able to let go of this life, right? And not so focused on building up this life and building up prestige and titles and possessions and wanting to be immortal. And it eliminates all ignorance, right? Of this view of a soul here, or of a permanent self, that I am a real entity, right? This view of atta. It eliminates all of that. It uproots all the conceit of I am. Basically, same thing. So we continue, just as bhikkhus in the Buddha gives beautiful similes, especially agricultural similes. So those of you that are familiar with farming, I feel like you have a more direct connection to the teachings of the Buddha than, me who grew up in a city. I haven't lived any of these experiences. So, some of you that have more of an agricultural background can really connect and have a more intimate connection with the similes and metaphors that the Buddha uses, which is such a lovely thing. We should try to connect to the Buddha in whichever way is easier for us, right? And if you kind of have this experience, try to use that to help you connect to the Dhamma. The Dhamma doesn't always have to be an academic or something different from your normal life. I mean, the Dhamma is accessible to us in our everyday lives and everything that we do. Just as bhikkhus in the autumn, a plowman plowing with a great plowshare cuts through all the rootlets of his plow, so too when the perception of impermanence is developed and culminated, it eliminates all sensual lust, it uproots all conceit, I am. Just as bhikkhus, a rush cutter would cut down a rush, grab it by the top and shake it down and shake it out and thump it about, so too when the perception of impermanence is developed and culminated, it eliminates all sensual lust, it uproots all conceit, I am. Just as bhikkhus, when the stalk of a bunch of mangoes has been cut, all the mangoes attached to the stalk follow along with it, so too the perception of impermanence that is developed, it uproots all conceit, I am. Just as bhikkhus, all the rafters of a house with a peak roof lead to the roof peak, slope towards the roof peak, and converge upon the roof peak is declared to be their chief. So too, when the perception of impermanence is developed, it uproots all conceit, I am. Just as bhikkhu, among fragrant roots, black orris is declared to be their chief. So too, when the perception of impermanence is developed, it uproots all conceit, I am. Just as bhikkhus, among fragrant heartwoods, red sandalwood is declared to be their chief. So too, when the perception of impermanence is developed, it uproots all conceit, I am. Just as bhikkhus, among fragrant flowers, jasmine declared to be their chief. So too, when the perception of impermanence is developed, it uproots all conceit, and you get, right, all these beautiful, beautiful similes, and we'll go straight to the end now. And how bhikkhus is the perception of impermanence, anicca sanya, developed and cultivated, so that it eliminates all sensual lust, eliminates all lust for existence, eliminates all ignorance, and uproots the conceit, I am. Such is rupa, such is its origin, such is its passing away. We're talking about change, impermanence, right? Seeing it arise and cease. Such is Vedana, such is Sanya, such is Sankara, such is Vijnana, such is its origin, its passing away. And that is how the perception of impermanence, anicca sanya, is developed and cultivated, so that it eliminates all sensual lust, eliminates all lust for existence, eliminates all ignorance, and uproots all conceit, I am. So this is very important for those of us that are trying to reach full awakening in this life, or even Sotapanna, Sotapatti in this life. When we're practicing, vipassana, trying to gain panya, wisdom, it is really through this lens of anicca sanya. Anicca sanya, it is that vipassana, is that clear vision, right? Vipassana, to see things clearly, is to see that all things are changing and that they're unsatisfactory and that they're non-self, right? This is really the key element to seeing things clearly and to gaining panya. So for those of you that are vipassana practitioners, this understanding of the Ti-Lakkhaṇa, understanding of anicca sanya, is essential for your practice. To see things, to see the world as it really is, to see these 5 khandhas as they really are, always changing. And I like to end with these beautiful verses of the Dhammapada, which I think many of you have heard on several occasions too. Sabbe sankara anichati yata panya pasata. Ata nibidanti duke esemago visuddhya. Sabbe sankara dukkati yada panya passati. Ata nibindati duke esemago visuddhya. Sabbe dhamma anattati yada panya passati. Ata nibindanti dukke esemago visuddhya. All sankharas are impermanent. When one sees this with insight, one comes out of suffering. This is the path of purity, right? Everything that depends on conditions, all constructed things, right? Everything basically, because nothing is permanent, right? When one sees this, one comes out of suffering, which means awakening, nibbana. All sankharas are dukkha, unsatisfactory. When one sees this with insight, wisdom, one comes out of suffering. This is the path to purity. All Dhamma, right? All phenomena, all concept are without self, are empty of self, anatta. When one sees this with insight, wisdom, one comes out of dukkha. This is the path to purity, right? So the Ti-Lakkhaṇa, the three characteristics of existence, are things that need to be seen, understood, and completely understood, and are the way to awakening, to nibbana, to final nirvana, to ending this cycle of rebirth and pain and suffering, right? Once we begin to see that all things, right, are impermanent, that all things are unsatisfactory, and that all things or all phenomena are empty of a self, there's nothing permanent, no me, myself, and I in any of these things, we reach final liberation. So it is essential that we understand this teaching of anicca for those of us who are working our way towards full awakening. I mean, this is the path, right? The path of purity. The path of purity is through understanding reality, right? Okay, and then, yes, and that's the end of my presentation, Sukhihotu. And now I'd like to leave it open for Q&A.
Okay, Bhante, thank you. You can, okay. Did you turn off the presentation, Bhante? The screen share? Okay. Thank you so much, Bhante, for your teaching, and especially for your time to connect with us on this platform. And I think really interesting topic, because this teaching of the Buddha, it is very universal, common to one and all. It's not only for those who call themselves as Buddhist or not, as a Cambodian or American, whatsoever. This teaching is very common to one and all, and it is very applicable to our daily lifestyle. Even though sometimes it is translated as three common characteristics, because it is common to all, but the teaching itself is not common. I mean, it's very deep, and it is the way to enlightenment, actually. People may ask, how do I become enlightened? Actually, it is the starting point, like Venerable was mentioning. It is the entry point to understand all the things the way they really are. If we truly understand the things the way they are, then we get samadhi. And if we have samadhi, all the factors of the noble eightfold path, they will comes together as one. And so it opens the way, and we understand the nature as it is, and it's way to enlightenment, actually. So thank you so much, Bhante. I really appreciate you for your time and teaching. So now we let our participants to have the question. If you all may have any question, just you can raise your hand, or just turn on your mic and ask the question. I'm trying to see. Bhante, did you stop the screen sharing?
I think so.
Okay, let me manage. Okay, let me see the participants. Okay, anyone, if you have any question or anything to say, just raise your hand or just turn on the mic and ask. Okay, feel free.
Yeah, I would like to raise my hand, but I raised my hand since the beginning. I don't think you see me. so, Bhante, let's see, from Chicago, Illinois, USA.
Oh, hello.
I pay respect to you. Like now, 28 a.m. Wednesday. I'm more interested in your story. You know, how do you become a Buddhist monk? Mostly, like, how do you believe in Buddha? Because in Mexico, mostly like Roman Catholic Church or Christian. And how did the Buddhist theory reach to you? And how you so purified to become a Buddhist monk? I just like want to know your interest story. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Ang. So I grew up in LA, in like the city part in Koreatown, and also in Thai town in Hollywood. So I always had a lot of Buddhist friends, you know, and Buddhism was all around me. So it's not something that I had to go look for, you know. It's just like, well, you know, my friend, he's Buddhist, and this person is Buddhist, and there's a Buddhist temple down the street. And so it was just always there. But it wasn't until I was in high school that I, you know, started asking more questions. And in high school, especially, I had a lot more Thai friends there, and Vietnamese friends who were also Buddhist, Mahayana Buddhist. And so I started asking them questions, you know, like, what is Buddhism? And they said, oh, you know, you just light candles and incense for your grandparents who died. And I said, oh, that sounds very interesting, but, you know, I thought Buddhism was other things. They're like, oh, you know, we also feed monks and we do stuff, you know. So they didn't have a very deep understanding about Buddhism. So I had to go buy a book. So I started reading many books on Buddhism, and that's what caught my interest, you know. And when I learned about the Noble Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, I said, oh, this is real. This is the truth. But you know, I wasn't mature enough at that time. I was still a teenager with all my hormones going crazy and partying and all those kind of things. So even though you hear the truth, it's difficult to take inside, right? Because the Kamma Chanda, right? The sensual world is so powerful. So I had that little experience, but I was overpowered by the worldly way. But then about 2 years after that, when I was 20 years old, I actually went to a Thai temple, and but no one spoke English. So they just gave me a book on the Noble Eightfold Path, which I liked because that's what I was really interested in. And then I went again, but I couldn't find any other monk to speak English to me. So when I was in my 20s, when I first started going to temples, it was very difficult to find anyone to explain to me. And when I asked my friends, they didn't know either what to do. And when I read a book, I mean, I understood the technical part, but how do you do this, right? Like, so there was a disconnect. So it took many years. I joined the Air Force. It took many years until I came back to the Dhamma with real interest. And it was because of Ajahn Brahmavanso from Australia. When he started posting stuff, I think it was like 2010, 2011, I started seeing his videos on YouTube. And I just started watching all day, every day. I was just watching Ajahn Brahm. And then I found Bhante Yuttadhammo from Canada doing the Dhammapada series. And, you know, it was through these two monks watching on YouTube that I said, okay, now it's time to really practice. So I found the Sri Lankan temple and I started practicing there. And then about after 2 or 3 years of serious practice, when I was 29, I decided, you know what, now it's time to become a monk. And then when I was 30 is when I finally became a monk. So it was a long process, you know, like from when I was like 7, 8 years old, being interested in Buddhism, to, you know, reading about Buddhism and studying it in high school, then going to temples when I was an adult, like 19, 20, and then learning more about it in my mid 20s and later 20s, and then finally taking the Ti-Lakkhaṇa and Panchasila, the 3 refuge and the 5 precepts, and then 2 years later, becoming a monk. So it was very, 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 very slow, very, very gradual path, and little by little, my eyes opening to see the light of the Dhamma, until it just became natural. Until one day I was like, you know what, this is what I need to do. There's no going back. I understand enough now where I can't go back. Yeah, that's my experience.
It sounds good.
Thank you so much. You think how do you you reach Buddhist theory to all Mexican-American, like at least like believe, like the 5 precepts. You don't have to believe in God or something, like believe in 5 precepts. So we are peaceful. How can you take the Buddhists to encourage them, to practice the 5 precepts or something?
And Bhante also let hear another question from Sister.
Oh, sorry.
Here. Yeah. She has raised her hand. Okay.
Just to answer Ang's real quick, I'm pretty sure we can, like 3 of the precepts will be pretty easy, like not killing, not stealing, not talking bad, but the other 2 are going to be a bit more difficult, especially the 5th one in Mexico. Sura Mereya, like that one's going to be very hard. So we
everywhere.
Yeah, so it's going to take maybe hundreds of years. Buddhism slowly went into Cambodia, right? And it took hundreds of years to, first it was like Cambodia's original religion, then Hinduism, then Buddhism. So it's going to take hundreds of years for, people in Latin America who are Buddhists to be able to, fully practice the 5 precepts.
Thank you so much. Really honored.
Yeah, Sister Kuntia.
Thank you, Bhante. Good evening, everyone. I really interested in presentation a moment by Venerable related to the word impermanence, anicca. Actually, this word I heard very often when I joined the Vipassana course, which this word is really it's the word that come that we are really recite. It's not mean recite, it's like we need to think about this word when we are really like to reduce pain. Normally in this course we come across with many pain, especially happen in the body, and yes, and normally I recite this word in my mind to reduce my pain also. And I think that it just happens when the body is not well or hurt, but it's not really when it's when this word is not appear when we feel that our body is fine, or we are satisfied with what we want and enjoy the process. That's why this word is not so much important. It's like we forget it. We forget with the word anicca. So my question is, normally when we feel pain, we call out the word anicca, but when we are seem okay, we are not stay in this word. So I would like to ask that how to develop this term of anicca or impermanent to our real life, to our daily practice. Thank you so much, Bhante.
Yeah, and you just brought up a very important issue, is that kamachanda, sensual lust, raga, it blinds us. It blinds us to seeing the reality of things. The Buddha gives an example. He says that kamachanda, when we talk about the pancha nivarana, the 5 hindrances, kamachanda is like putting ink in the water, right? And now you can't see the water clearly because it has ink inside. So when everything's stable and we're happy, actually our vision is completely clouded by that illusion of stability and happiness, fake happiness, mundane happiness, sensual happiness. We can't see clearly. The mind is completely tainted with this ink of that kind of satisfaction from that. So it's difficult for us in those moments to see the impermanence. But if we pay attention, we can see even that happiness and stability crack. We can see the little parts where it's not there all the time. Like you may have noticed right now when you're sitting down, listening to this Dhamma talk, how many times did he move in your seat? Why did he move from your seat? If your seat's so comfortable, you're at home, you have your nice chair, you have your nice cushion. So comfortable, so stable, right? No one's bothering you. You're right here listening to the Dhamma in a beautiful place, right? But even now you felt dukkha. That's why you moved. You moved from your seat many times. Or maybe you heard people talking or a noise or a car and you're trying to focus and you're like, oh, I'm trying to listen to the Dhamma talk and something's bothering me. So even in these moments that we think that we're completely happy and we're stable and that everything's fine, if we pay attention, we can see that there's cracks, there's these little spaces. And in those little gaps and those little spaces, we can realize, oh no, this happiness too, or this supposed illusion of stability is also dukkha, it's unstable. So that's why we need to have sati all the time from the moment that we wake up to when we go to sleep, so we can see how things are changing. Instead of having this stuck view, either like, oh, my life is horrible and there's no hope and it's all dukkha, or everything's perfect and stable and I don't have to worry about anything, there's no problems. Those are two extremes that need to be avoided. But if we practice sati, we'll see this fluctuating all the time. There's moments of sukha, there's moments of dukkha, moments of sukha, moments of dukkha. And you're like, oh, wow, it's always changing between sukha and dukkha. So we need to practice more sati. More practice of sati will help us see in these moments when we think we're happy or everything's fine, that things are not as happy or as fine as we thought, right? So it just takes more bringing the practice of satipatthana off the cushion into your everyday life. And everything that you're doing, you have to practice sati all the time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Bhante. I catch what you mean. So I just learned that when our body is movement, it can reflect that it is impermanent. It is right. It's like
Yes.
when we heard the sound and when we think about this and then we move up, mean that we sitting listening, but sometimes we just want to do something, but with it's like sometimes it is not, it's without sati, because our sati it's low, and then we cannot find out that it is impermanent happen. So impermanent is happen every moment, when we sit, when we move, and what we need to realize mean that every moment we need to work it with sati. I mean that what is happen. It's like why we move it, why we do this or we do that, or like normally I don't know, but because in the course I don't feel that sukha is happen. It's like that only the dukkha, and then something that I don't know. It is like blur, or we don't know what it is. It's like something that the area that we cannot touch when sukh, or but the dukkha is we touching, but the sukha is seem that we just when dukkha is released, it means that it our body, our pain is reduced. We feel something like not sukha, but less pain or less dukkha. It's something like that. So thank you, Bhante, for your answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have some more people. Brother Nin, yeah. Brother Ginin, you can turn on the mic.
Okay, yes, I can. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, Bhante. Sorry for not turning on my camera because my phone camera is broken. Sorry for that. Yes, my question is similar to Brother Anyo. It's not about a presentation given by you, but it is related to your personal affairs. Sorry for that. Anyways, thank you so much for your very nice presentation here. And I have one question, and of course, I think there are many lay lay Buddhist people around your community. So how do you get food to eat, Bhante? Sorry for that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a very good practical question, right? Yeah, so I'm so fortunate. I've been staying at a Sri Lankan temple for 8 years, and I have the opposite problem. There's too much food, actually. I have to cover my bowl all the time because when I first became a monk, I gained 15 pounds. Gained 15 pounds. I got all fat as a monk, and I said, I have to be careful and say no. So actually, I've been so lucky. The Asian community in the United States has supported me. All the communities, Sri Lankan, Myanmar, Cambodian, Thai, Laotian, Vietnamese, like all these communities have supported me. Even in this place, we have a big Asian community. So food is not a problem. And even when I go Pindapat, I may not get a lot of food, but I get enough to survive for the day. So yeah, it's not that big of an issue. And sometimes it can be the opposite. There's too much food, so it just depends, on the day and who's there and where I'm at. And the problem can go either way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Bhante, could I connect one more question? Sorry for that. Could I? Okay. So based on your background, it means you can elaborate the teaching of the Buddhas in Spanish as well. Is it true?
Yes. For the last, I think, 6 years, I've been teaching the Dhamma in Spanish, mostly online, but also besides the 2 years of COVID that we couldn't travel, I was going to Mexico about twice a year and going to Spain at least once a year, sometimes twice a year for the last 4 or 5 years. And also been doing online retreats for people in South America and Central America and people who speak Spanish all over the world. I mean, they're everywhere. So it's the problem is that there isn't enough bhikkhus, that's the problem. There's a handful of us only, in the whole world that speak Spanish and that are bhikkhus. Also, there's no facilities really, besides there's one vihara, Burmese vihara in Mexico. But besides that, there's no other viharas in Spanish-speaking countries, including Spain and Europe. There's no viharas, so it's very difficult. And there's not a big Asian population, Theravada population in Latin American countries, usually like in the US and Canada, like Cambodian or Thai or the Sri Lankan community can support. But over there, we don't have those communities. Not many Asians are immigrated to those parts of the world. So those are the challenges we face, not having enough support from upasikas and upasakas, and not having a vihara, and then also not enough bhikkhus, right? So even if we had everything, there's not enough monks even then, so it's a difficult situation. So I don't know. I have maybe some Cambodian monks can start learning Spanish. We can teach the little samaneras Spanish.
Okay.
I have
so
been
much.
managing to
English and Spanish English, Spanish, Hindi, and Mandarin are the biggest languages in the world, right? Spanish is up there in like the top 4 languages. So it'd be very nice if some Cambodian samaneras can learn Spanish.
I have tried, and before I have tried to learn Spanish, but then I stopped. Too many books. Okay, now we go another with I think we have
Okay, thank you so much.
people. First Sister Jenny, and then Yom Melanie. Okay, Jenny, you go first.
Hi, Bhante. I have a question about dispassion and aversion. I noticed that you were, or in the suttas talks about dispassion, which is raga, I believe. And I have as you know, probably, I have a personality where aversion is really a common trait for me. And so I have sometimes trouble kind of like separating aversion from dispassion. Maybe it's because I don't really understand the full difference between the two. So I was wondering how could I move from aversion to dispassion, which I guess to me it's like letting go. Would you say so? Yeah.
So this,
okay, you want to answer
Bhante?
first, Bhante? Okay, you can go first, Bhante.
This passion really, it gets to what you're saying is letting go, but what does that mean? Where does that come from? It means from losing interest, actually. You lose interest in those things, right? That's what this passion. So you lose interest in the things that usually caught your interest, like doing all these worldly things. You're like, just kind of like now, maybe when you were a child, you had something seemed so important and they were so interesting. And now you try to go back and you're like, no, like it's not there anymore. You just lost interest in it. So that's really what we're talking about. You lose interest in these things. And the other part, the like repulsion, revulsion, is seeing the danger in those things, right? So like you see like, oh, wow, if I keep doing this or entertaining this, like there's not going to be good consequences. So like I shouldn't do it, right? There's like a reluctance to do it, So it's not like an aversion where like, oh, I hate it. It's not that kind of aversion, but it's just kind of like, oh, this is not something that I should do. You feel that kind of like feeling in you. This is not something that I like anymore or that I should do. It's not good.
Okay, thank you.
Melanie Lim from Oregon.
Thank respect to Bhante. Thank you so much for the very beautiful speech today. It's so meaningful. And I have a question about the not self. The suffering, impermanent, I can relate to it. And dukkha, I can relate to it. But the non-self one is very hard to convince people to understand that part. They say, no, this is me, this is mine. So how you go about to try to explain to other people to understand that part? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, we can invite people to investigate for themselves, right? This is not a belief system where you just believe it and you'll be fine. You have to actually see it for yourself and know for yourself. So, tell them, try to find this me, try to find the mind. Like, look for it. Where is it? Is it in the body? Because the body's always changing. If you were to lose your arm, do you lose yourself? Right? If you lose your nose, do you lose yourself? If you become blind, do you lose yourself? Right? If you become mute, do you lose yourself? If you forget your memory, do you lose yourself? Let's say you can't feel anymore. You don't feel pain anymore. There's some people, some accidents happen and they lose feeling in their body. Do you become less of a self? Like, where is this self that you're talking about? And have them explore. Is it in the brain? Is it in the thought? Is it in the feeling? Where is this self? Try to find it. And you won't be able to find it. They'll go, well, I know there's a self, there's me, but what does this mean? And they can't explain, So they'll realize that it's just like a concept. It's an illusion. It's just a thought. It's just a feeling that they're talking about. There's no real self there. There's the feeling of self. There's the idea of a self. Those are true. There is an idea of a self. There's a feeling of a self. But there's no actual thing that you can find to call a self. So it's really about encouraging people to be curious and investigate their own perceptions. We all have these ideas about the world and we never check them. Just like I told you in the beginning, I want you to check what I told you today and go read the suttas for you to find out for yourself, right? So also when we come to non-self, we want to encourage people to check for themselves. It's not something that they need to believe, but it's something that they need to think about and analyze their own world and experience to get there. And only that way will they be able to understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's a really a big problem nowadays, especially like 10 years ago, when I started to introduce Buddhism with the Western world. It's really hard when people ask such questions related to the not self. Simply, when we talk about dukkha and anicca, they can easily relate to it. Because they easily experience it and observe it, but nevertheless, the theory of anatta is very controversial, and even for me at the time, it was really hard to find the way to explain it, because I myself also did not understand it in a true sense, according to the purpose of the Buddha, So I think just like you said, we have to observe it not just by seeing it apparently, but observe it internally, and you know, through the starting point with the anicca, and then we can go to the unsatisfactory, the dukkha, and then the anatta easily. Yeah, thank you, Bhante. And we have another person, Sister Pasika.
Yes. Good evening, Bhante Kru, Bhante Sanathavihari. Yeah, namaskar again. Actually, yes, my question is similar to Auntie Melanie, but actually I will go to something else. I just mean like how to apply anicca in life. Actually, this is, I can hear some answer already. But I want to go a little bit deeper, because sometimes introduce Buddhism to non-Buddhism is one side, but actually introduce Buddhism to Buddhism, sometimes I feel like it's more difficult to me like this, because I feel like when I heard the word anicca, impermanent, non-self, anatta, blah, 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 it seems like I know this is only the word, but I don't know how to push that kind of word deeper inside me. It means that going to practice. For example, as layman, laywoman like me, we're talking about beauty. Actually, women love beauty. So when we are talking about non-self, it means like forget about it. How can we forget about it in this life? It's really difficult. So any advice to us, or maybe how can we apply it more and more on that? Just not only the word, not only Buddha teaching, but we can, I mean that I can apply in our daily life. My second question, I refer to Buddhist, not non-Buddhist, who will be easy to adapt anicca, I mean that laywoman, or a monk, I mean something like that. I mean that not myself, that I feel like I just learned the word. I just learned, okay, anicca, but actually I face it, we face it, and we cannot accept it. When problem face to us, we react like we don't learn about Buddha teaching, just something like that. And there will be something else. And from your experience, like I, like a layman or monk, which one is easy understand about the word anicca? One day you understand, you can get it.
So we have to remember that all the teachings like meditation and in the Ti-Lakkhaṇa, which anicca is one, and anatta and dukkha are others, are all part of a whole system that the Buddha, or a whole teaching that the Buddha gave us, right? So anicca by itself, if we just try to use anicca, it's not going to work. If we try to use just sati by itself, it's not going to work. We need to develop the whole path, right? The whole magga. We need to develop all of the Eightfold Path. So the Buddha teaches us the gradual training, right? First practicing in dana, in giving, the benefits of giving, the benefits of sila, practicing sila, the benefits of like being reborn in a heavenly place, the benefits of cultivating our mind, like practicing Brahma Viharas. And then we get into like the higher trainings, right? Of like Satipatthana, and getting all these like deeper knowledges of the world. So a lot of the time, if we're struggling with a deep idea like anicca, dukkha, and anatta, or paticca samuppada, or panchakanda, if we're struggling with these things, we might need to go back a little bit and work on our foundations, right? Build a strong base, a strong foundation. Because when you're practicing dana, giving, you're letting go. I mean, it's part of dispassion. It's part of selflessness. You're no longer me, myself, and I. You're thinking about others instead of yourself, right? Also with sila, you're thinking about the benefit of others, the benefit of society. So even though these more kind of practices in sila and bhavana, we build a strong basis for us to be able to see clearly anicca. So that's one thing that's always my base. I always go to with people. It's like, okay, yes, we practice vipassana and we have a lot of knowledge of the suttas and abhidhamma, But how is your everyday practice? You know, every day, are you practicing dana? Every day, are you practicing sila? That's the foundation. We also need to have saddha, a lot of confidence in the Buddha, because we don't know where we're going. We're trusting the Buddha that he's taking us in the right place too. So we develop these factors, and that will make the mind very nice and calm and stable for us to be able to see anicca a little bit better. And then for our everyday lives, I mean, we cultivate sati, as I said earlier, and we try to pay attention to everything that we're doing. And we see how everything is always changing, and that this change leads to us being unsatisfied, right? We're not always getting it. We're not always getting things the way we want them to get, right? And realize that things are out of our control. Even this body and the things we see and taste and touch and our feelings and our thoughts, the thoughts just appear in your mind and then they disappear. Who brought them there, right? They just appeared. They're just changing all the time. So that higher level of training and sati in our everyday lives is very important also. Not only sati when we practice meditation, right? Satipatthana, vipassana, but sati in our everyday lives, that together with our good foundation in dana, sila, saddha, bhavana, and the rest of the path. So we need to bring all the pieces together for it to work, right? If we're missing some pieces, the part of the Ti-Lakkhaṇa anicca is not gonna work in the non-self, because we need all the pieces to be there.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer, Bhante. Yeah, thank you. I think we go with the last question because of the time. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Venerable Kongpro, I see you write a comment. Venerable Kongpro, are you here? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. You have the question, right? Yeah, please ask.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask one question regarding the 3 universal marks. I think we all understand well the 3 universal marks, but somehow we cannot handle or control our mind not to think so much. For example, if our friend, relative, or parents or our beloved one pass away because of immediate accident, why can't we stop thinking so much? And how can we handle our mind if we are told that our cancer will cause us to live just only in 3 months? So I want to hear your good advice for all of us and to those who are dealing with these issues. Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. There's a difference between intellectual knowledge and experiential knowledge, right? So intellectual knowledge gives you a manual on how to ride a bicycle, and you read everything about the bicycle. You know everything about bicycles, to ride in the rain, to ride in the snow, the tires, you know how much weight can the bicycle take, but you've never ridden the bicycle. So when you try to ride the bicycle, what's going to happen? You're going to fall. You know, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You have a lot of knowledge, you know, about bicycles, everything, but you don't have experience in bicycles. So what we need to do is focus more on experiential knowledge, right? Living the Dhamma, not so much on the intellectual parts, like the lady was saying earlier. I know anicca, the word anicca. Well, that's just the word, you know, that's not actually anicca. That's just a concept that you're using as a tool to try to guide you towards seeing that reality for yourself, right? So what we need to do is we need to place more emphasis on bringing the Dhamma into our everyday lives, right? And feeling this experience. And just because we get sad when we lose someone that we love doesn't mean we don't understand anicca. It just means that we don't fully understand it yet, right? Because there's pariyati, patipati, and patideva. There's 3 levels, right? So we might have the first 1 or 2, but we don't have the 3rd one. So we do understand anicca, but not completely, because we're not an arahant, okay? So even if you feel sad or if you feel pain when things change or you lose someone or things don't go your way, don't tell yourself, oh, I don't understand, I'm not good enough or anything like that. You do understand, but you don't have complete understanding. And I have to go now. I hear the bell ringing now, Bhante, so I have to go for the dana.
Okay. Yeah, that's
okay, so clear.
Thank you so much, Bhante, for your time to share with all of us. And if anyone would like to see Bhante, just information, he's going to Cambodia in December. Perhaps we can arrange a Dhamma talk a chance to listen to his Dhamma talk. So thank you, Bhante, and thank you everyone. Sukhi hotu anumodana. Okay. Okay, goodbye everyone. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.